My name is Volker Kruger. I'm joined by Johannes Mokotedi again from our Labour Law Department. Thank you for joining us, Johannes.
Good afternoon, Volker. Thank you for the invite.
We're talking about some new developments in respect of domestic workers. Please explain, Johannes.
Okay. Thank you, Volker. Remember, the government deemed it fit that from now and then they will gazette some rates which are applicable and take them to be the minimum rates which are payable to various employees. Now, in our topic today, the government also deemed it fit that they gazette rates which are applicable to our domestic workers. Now, in terms of the new gazetted rates, with effect from the 1st of March 2022, domestic workers are paid a minimum of 23 Rand 19 cents. But it's very important for you to look at that specific gazette because of it differs from one area to another.
That's of course hourly rate, no?
Yes, it's an hourly rate, yes, which differs from one area to another. They're very importantly so, you must check on those rates which are applicable to you, then pay the domestic worker working for you according to those rates. Now, what happens if you don't pay them according to those rates? Now, if you don't, now you are the risk of being referred to CCMA or Department of Labour for contraventions of this payments, and they can make an award in their favor, calculated in terms of how much they are not being paid, and therefore it's very important for you to keep in touch and for you to take note of those gazetted rates. For now, for the period of this year, which will be from March 2022 to March 2023, it is 23 Rand 19 cents. Now, for an employee in our area, for instance, I checked, and in our area, the minimum to be paid to a domestic worker is 3,710 Rands and 40 cents. That is for an employee who's working at least 40 hours per month. It should also be noted, very important, that on the 18th of February...
Sorry, I just can interrupt you there. That might be 40 hours per week, I suppose. Was it 40 per month?
40 hours per month.
Per month?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, it's very important also to note that in respect of the very same domestic workers, on the 18th of February 2021, the Compensation Commissioner gazetted a notice to employers of domestic workers, informing them of their responsibility to register domestic workers with the compensation fund. It's very, very important. Now, if you fail to do such, and your employee gets hurt or get a disease or something of that sort, and she can ultimately make a claim against the compensation fund, you as the employer can be held liable and pay for those damages. Therefore, I want to pause here, and I want us to look at the relationship between you as the employer and the employee. Remember that the employment relationship between the domestic worker and the employer is primarily regulated by the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. It will also give you a clear indications of the conditions to set in your contract and in regulating your relationship. However, it's very important that you do a contract between you and your worker. However, it is not a must, but it's advisable that you set and spell out the relationship as well as the terms in terms of the contract for people not to be surprised for people to know what to expect from such a kind of a relationship.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That I think makes sense. I just checked the calculations. It must be 23 Rand per hour, and that's 40 hours per week. Now, that's 5 times 8 hours a week. Obviously, you can agree with your employee that he works less hours, and then it's the hourly rate that applies. So there's no problem in agreeing on a reduction of the number of hours that the employee works. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct, Volker.
Yeah.
Now, it's very important. Agree with your employee, and but this amount refers to an hourly rate, not a minimum monthly payment, but a minimum hourly rate.
Yes, yes. So if it's, for example, 40 hours per week times 4, if I'm not mistaken, if it's about 23 Rand, yeah, you get about 3,700 Rand for that month, if those are the number of hours you're working with. So yeah, obviously you just need to check your area, make sure that you use the correct hourly rate, and then you can work out and make sure that you at least pay them that minimum amount.
Yes. Now, Volker, it's also important for the employers to know that the domestic workers are entitled to be paid double if they work on Sundays. And in addition to that, if they also work on public holidays. Remember, they are not duty-bound to work on those days, but try to reach an agreement with them. But if they do work on those days, they're entitled to double the rate, which is 43 Rand and 43 Rand and 88 cents or something of that amount. But it's very important that talk to your domestic worker, agree with them on terms, and ultimately implement the terms, taking into account what the law says. Maybe just to recap, very important, it's advisable for you to have a black and white written employment contract which regulates the relationship between you and your employee. Okay. Now, bear in note that if the employee is working for a minimum period of 27 hours per month, you are also duty bound to register them with UIF. Remember, UIF is 2% of the amount of earnings they receive. Now, the normal practice is that the employer pay 1%, the employee pay 1%. Or in many instances, the employer will absorb the whole 2% and pay it and register them for UIF. It's an easy exercise to do. You can do it online. You visit the website of the Department of Labor, and it's an easy process to follow. And they will give you a contributor's number, and you register your employee as a beneficiary and pay that amount per month. It is a good thing to do because if anything wrong goes with the employee, they'll be able to claim from the UIF. For instance, if there is death, then they'll be able to claim from such funds. And if they go on maternity leave, they'll be able to claim from such funds. If there is unpaid leave, like family responsibility leave, they'll be able to claim from such funds. It is not a big amount of money, but once you have your ducks in a row and let them register and be registered, you will be in compliance, and there will be no fault on your part. The other point which I also want us to discuss is the deductions that you are not allowed to do on your employees' payments. Number one, take note that in terms of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, you are not allowed to deduct more than 25% of the employee's normal earnings.
Even with the consent of the employee, you're not allowed to.
No, if it is with the consent of the employee, I think you can do such. But in terms of the law, you cannot on your own do a deductions of 25%. If it is a consent, then I think maybe the law will allow that. Okay. Now, number two, while she's busy doing or going about executing his or her duties in your house, there'll be some damages and breakages. Other people will on their own meromutu make such deduction. In terms of the law, you are not allowed to do such. In addition to that, meals. I know this is a contentious issue. You are not allowed to make any deductions of any meals that you provide. Remember, in terms of the law, you are not duty bound to provide meals. But if you decide to provide such, you cannot make it a deductions on part of their salary.
Accommodation?
Accommodation it's something different. I think you can do the calculations. It's not covered in the Act. And in addition to that, the cost of clothing or work equipment, you are not allowed to make such deductions. And in addition to that, work equipment.
Okay. And if you make the monthly UIF payments, if I can come back to that, you use that number that you got when you registered them as employer to make your payments online on a monthly basis to make sure that the payments are correctly allocated. Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, that is correct. Yes. And in addition to that, people must also remember that the domestic workers are also entitled to go on leave. They are entitled to 21 days leave, which a normal employee receives. And if there's a part-time employee, they receive about 17 days. They are also entitled to sick leave. They are also entitled to maternity leave. They are also entitled to family responsibility leave, as well as parental leave and adoptive parental leave.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Johannes. I think that gives all the many employers of domestic workers in the country a good idea of what they need to adhere to in terms of the law.
Yeah, it makes it that simple. And in addition to that, if there's any questions, they can go to the website of the Department of Labor. But I think on our website, we also have a simple contract of a domestic worker, which people can easily download for their own for their own benefit. If they want maybe to consult or make specific terms and change the terms, they can easily consult with us, and we will advise accordingly. And finally, Volker, the same rules in respect of any relationship, there can be termination. However, for such termination to take place, people must follow what the law prescribes. There must be a disciplinary inquiry. There must be a finding. And the domestic worker can also be found guilty and be dismissed. In addition to that, they can be retrenched. And however, if they are retrenched, they are entitled to a retrenchment package and payment as per what the law requires.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.